Today on the CTV News at 5, hundreds of High River evacuees are headed to Lethbridge. Plus, sentencing for a Lethbridge man who admitted to faking his own abduction to hide millions of dollars of his father-in-law's money he lost. And former residential school abuse victims protest the alleged mishandling of thousands of claims.
CTV News with Jackie Scantlebury.
Good afternoon. The community of Lethbridge is opening its arms to hundreds of High River flood evacuees. Up to 400 evacuees who had been staying in Nanton are just arriving in our city to stay at the University of Lethbridge residence. As you can see, staff and volunteers have been busy preparing, setting up registration tables. University officials say they have 1 to 6 bedroom apartments available for evacuees in their resident facilities. At the U of L, evacuees will have access to food services, the gym, pool, and a number of children's camps that are operating on campus.
It does feel good. It's a horrible situation for everybody, and I think the university has really come together. We have volunteers standing by. The call went out today, and everyone has just responded, very well, because they know that this is probably, the worst situation that anybody could be in. So.
And it's been an extremely frustrating 7 days for those High River flood victims, but we're getting a better understanding of just how big that cleanup will be. Today, the town received $50 million from the province. That money will go towards covering the cost of emergency response. It will also be used for the initial bills related to recovery efforts. And those preloaded debit cards we told you about yesterday are now being handed out to evacuees to help them cover their basic costs. While the financial support is welcome news, residents are still upset they haven't been able to get back into their homes yet. Last night, 3 people tried to break through a barrier. Instead of getting to their homes, though, their actions landed them in cuffs. And in Medicine Hat, while some residents are cleaning up, others are still waiting for home inspections to resume after some dangerous sewer backups created problems for crews. Large areas of the North Flats are now able to be inspected. Outdoor water restrictions are still in place. 90% of homes already inspected have been determined to be safe for occupation. Garbage bins are being placed throughout the areas in the flats. The berm around the power plant will be moved in the next day or so. A local state of emergency continues in the East Kootenay community of Wassa as Wassa Lake waters continue to rise. Wassa Lake is creeping up on homes, flooding yards and ditches. All homes that have requested sandbags have now been sandbagged. Another crew from the Ministry of Forest has been brought in to make even more. The flooding is due to last week's overflowing of the Kootenay River. Water filled the floodplains around Wassa, and now that water is making its way into the lake. Boaters have been asked to stay off the lake as wakes could force more water into homes or disrupt sandbags that have been placed. Water levels have not yet peaked.
So we do know that typically it's a 7 to 10 day window that we feel impacts. That is what we're seeing now, and that's what the forecasters are telling us to be prepared for. Obviously, we hope that we'll see things stabilize and that the community isn't impacted by further rising waters, but we are preparing for the worst just because that is the indication that it's a possibility.
Almost 14,000 sandbags have been deployed in Wassa, along with 12 water pumps. Meanwhile, 6 train cars, 5 of them loaded with petroleum chemicals, continue to hover above the Bow River in Calgary this hour. For more than 12 hours, a slow and delicate recovery operation has been underway on the Bonnybrook Rail Bridge. The cars are tethered to a grain train. 5 were filled with a petroleum thinning agent. That material is now being transferred into cars on an adjacent trail bridge. The bridge began to collapse shortly before 4 o'clock this morning. It is now stable, according to crews, but questions are being raised about inspections of the bridge. CP Rail says it was thoroughly checked Saturday. The track was inspected on Monday. Two words we're very happy to hear: sunny and hot.
Absolutely. For the next several days, we've got a very stable air mass over southern and central Alberta. To the north, still some pockets of precipitation we'll talk about. But here in the south, we are expecting dry conditions, hot conditions, and that can do nothing but help that water evaporate through the High River and Medicine Hat area. So we're looking forward to that. And I'll have more details in a couple of minutes.
All right, Dory. A young Lethbridge father who faked his own disappearance to cover up that he had lost millions of his father-in-law's money will not have a criminal record. 25-year-old Matthew Robillard was reported missing after he failed to show up for work in Picture Butte back in January. Police and volunteers launched a massive search. Robillard showed up 3 days later in a Calgary hotel, claiming that he had been abducted. This afternoon in court, Robillard admitted he faked the kidnapping to hide that he'd lost $2 million his father-in-law gave him to invest. Robillard was going to say that he'd been forced to wire the money overseas. He even went as far as burning his arms with an iron, punching himself, and cutting his leg and cheek to make the story more believable. Robillard was given a conditional sentence today. He must also serve 14 months probation, 100 hours of community service, and pay a $100 fine. And a search is underway along the Bull River near Cranbrook for a missing 20-year-old man from Jaffrey, BC. 2 helicopters scanned about 6 kilometers of the river, while ground search and rescue crews also worked the shoreline. Crews from all over the East Kootenay were called in, along with specialty teams in rope search and swiftwater rescue. The young man left his campsite in the dark to head to Jaffrey, but he didn't make it. The search concentrated on a place where tracks left the Bull River Road into the Bull River Dam. As of today, neither the man nor his vehicle have been located. Fast running water is hampering the search.
With the heavy rain and the high water, the turbidity, you can't see anything in the water. It makes it just about impossible to search for things. And we've experienced that before, where we're going to have to, you're going to have to wait and let the elements help you out.
Volunteers are continuing the search today by kayak, and they are also monitoring the levels. The Lethbridge Regional Police Service has promoted one of its inspectors to Deputy Chief. Colin Cotonio will take over the new position August the 1st. He has been with the police service for 33 years, graduating from the Lethbridge College Law Enforcement Program in 1980. As Deputy Chief, Cotonio will assist Police Chief Tom McKenzie in day-to-day operations. He'll also oversee professional standards, policy and accreditation, the business management section, as well as victim services. The survivors of Indian residential schools are calling for sanctions against lawyers who fail to properly represent their clients during the independent assessment process. They're also demanding that elders be paid back any fees they were improperly charged and receive compensation for high interest on loans that were given to hundreds of clients. More than 24 people turned out in Cardston and Standoff today demanding answers. Terry Vogt was there.
It looks like any other house, but to some, this building in Cardston is now a symbol of a failed attempt at reconciliation and compensation for Indian residential school survivors. Hundreds of elders came to this house to meet their lawyer, David Blott, to tell their stories of suffering and abuse while growing up in residential schools. Memories so outrageous and painful that in Malvina Braverock's case were considered improbable. Her claim was rejected.
They did not believe what I was saying, and what proof do I have? I was 4 years old. I have no proof. All I have are my memories I've been trying to forget.
It's thought up to 5,000 residential school survivors were represented by lawyer David Blott, who was later banned from handling residential survivor claims. An investigation determined the clients got inadequate representation. In some cases, Blott helped facilitate high-interest loans in anticipation of receiving a settlement.
Me, I got $153,000, and out of that, I only got $53,000. $100,000 I didn't see.
Well, I feel angry.
Elaine Brass has since discovered her compensation would have been much higher, but her psychology and medical records were submitted too late to be considered.
How many elders have to suffer, is my question.
These demonstrators say the process has been flawed from the very beginning, that there never has been nor is there any oversight to make sure the claims are being handled fairly and to watch over the lawyers. Terry Vogt, CTV News, on the Blood Reserve.
Well, we now know there will be at least 3 names on the ballot box this October during the race for mayor.
I'm officially announcing I'm running for mayor.
Bridget Mearns made the announcement this morning at Paradise Canyon Golf Resort. She's the 3rd candidate to come forward with intentions to run for mayor. Mearns was elected to her first term as city councillor in 2010. She was born and raised in Lethbridge. If elected, she says she hopes to make changes.
The way that we do things, the way we work with city administration, the way we work with our business community, the way we work with our community organizations can be stronger and better. And I'm passionate about making sure those connections are made, because at the end of the day, we all have the same common goal, which is building Lethbridge together and building a better and greater Lethbridge.
Councillor Farron Ellis and former Holy Spirit School trustee Chris Spearman are also running for mayor. A Lethbridge radio station has put the call out to help their sister stations damaged in the flooding. CKVN's partner station in High River is now 5 feet underwater and their staff has been displaced. A call went out to the community and Lethbridge has stepped up. CKVN has already sent 6 or 7 carloads of clothes to Okotoks and High River to help flood victims. But the flood-struck communities are now at their limit for clothes, and they're asking instead for gift cards or for gas, groceries, coffee, even pharmacies, since many of the victims are out of their regular routine and are missing their prescriptions.
This was one thing that we knew we could do to help. And we talked to our Okotoks office and they said, you know what, there's staff here with no clothes and their friends have no clothes and their families have no clothes. And we went, can we do this? And they're like, yep.
There's also a huge demand for personal hygiene items and men's work boots. A group of Southern Alberta performers are holding a concert tonight to raise money for flood victims. Dave McCann is among more than a dozen musicians who've agreed to take part in the Lethbridge Concert for Alberta Flood Relief. They spent the afternoon today getting ready for the concert. It started just a few minutes ago at CASA, the Lethbridge Community Arts Centre. Some of the musicians say they got the idea after driving through High River on the way from Calgary to Lethbridge.
People just, I think they're feeling for the victims of these floods, and they want to come together as a community and sort of put that together. For me as an artist, it's nice to be supported that way with the music, but it's really not about that. It's really about just coming out and raising cash for things that are going on in your community and seeing if you can do something about it.
You can still catch some of the concert. It goes until 9 o'clock tonight. Admission is by donation, suggested $10 minimum. All proceeds will be turned over to the Red Cross Flood Relief Fund. Coming up, Dory's going to tell us more about that hot, summery July long weekend we've got ahead. First, though, today's markets.